Paul from Deutsche Auto Parts. Today we're going to be going through how to replace a driver's side door latch assembly on a Mark 4 Jetta. This was on a 2001, but this applies to pretty much all Mark 4s. Here's our door latch assembly. One thing we want to keep in mind with this, there have been multiple revisions of this door latch assembly. The earlier versions of this were AKs, 3B1 A37 015AK, and they are now a 3B1 A37 015AS. And you are going to want to make sure you get the most current version of that. During this video, you're also going to see how to remove the driver's side door panel, the driver's side window regulator assembly, and the driver's side door latch, obviously, because that's what we're doing. Going through that, we also discussed briefly about how to diagnose the alarm problems that are associated with door latches. Excuse our quality problems with the audio associated with the video because we did have some technical difficulties during the initial filming of the video, so we had to do a voiceover to make sure we got all the tips that we wanted to add on that video. The tools required for this job are a short extension, 8mm triple square, T27 Torx, a T25 Torx, a 3/8 ratchet, a 1/4 inch ratchet, a small flathead pocket screwdriver, a stubby Phillips screwdriver, you are going to need this, and then a regular size Phillips screwdriver. And we are using a panel popper tool. You can use a flathead screwdriver, a larger one, or something of that nature. We also have our Volkswagen magnetic bolt tray to keep us organized, and then tape to hold the window up. You are going to want to make sure that you're using a masking tape of some kind and not electrical tape or duct tape, because you're using this to hold the window up when you remove it from the window regulator assembly.
When you're starting to diagnose the vehicle problems related to the door latch assemblies that can cause a multitude of problems, most of them generally revolve around alarm issues. Sometimes the alarm going off by itself, sometimes the car will arm itself, the alarm will arm itself and lock all the doors, and all of this would generally be related to the door latch assembly. This generally happens due to the fact that the door latch doesn't know when the door is open or closed, causing the alarm to arm itself, thinking it never has been opened. So if you take a look here at the dome light and you open the door, it doesn't turn on. That's the easiest way to know for sure the dome light should turn on, and it does not. So if we go and open our passenger door, it turns on, as you can see, as it should, telling the vehicle that the door is open, open the dome light. So shut the door, there the light turns off, and now you see that that is our symptom is going to be the door latch itself, and we can go into how to replace that. Here we are at the driver's side door. We can start by taking a look over here. Here is the door latch assembly itself. If we take a look, the door assembly itself will need to be taken off, the whole panel, and then the window regulator assembly behind it. We can start by removing the trim panel, and there are 3 screws along the bottom, and they are a T20 Torx, and we can start by removing those. Here we have our Volkswagen magnetic bolt tray. This will help us keep our bolts organized when we take them out so we don't lose anything while we're coming apart. Next, we can remove the switch panel, and there is a small clipped piece in the back of the panel. All you do is push it forward towards the outside of the door and it comes out. Small pocket screwdriver should be sufficient for that. Take a look here, it just clips into this side, and then we can pop this complete panel up. Now the switches are plugged in here, so you are going to need to unplug them. Now we have 3 Phillips screws that hold this in. You may want to have a magnet handy when you're doing this, just so that you can grab them without them falling into the door and potentially losing them. So something to keep in mind. Last, we have a Phillips screw that is mounted right here at the door. You will need a stubby screwdriver or a small screwdriver, and we can take that out. So when you're pulling the door panel off, all you're going to need to do is kind of get your fingers underneath of it, and you're going to just pull. It is on there pretty good, so you are going to want to get your fingers underneath there and pull pretty hard. Now when removing this panel, it's hooked on along the top of the door here, so you will have to pull up and over. The door panel itself has the door pin or door lock actuator assembly, has a little rod that hooks through the door, so you will want to make sure you don't break that off, because you have to clear that when you're getting the door panel over it. If you see, it's at the back side of the door panel. So you go up and over. Keep in mind you do have all the wires and switches are still connected to everything, so you will need to take all this off. The door handle itself has a cable attached to it. It has a hook that goes on and then a clip that mounts it to the door. You may want to have a screwdriver handy just to remove. Some of the connectors for the mirror switch are hard to get to with just your fingers, so a small screwdriver or a pick might be helpful. Down at the bottom of the door on this particular model, we'll have 3 connectors that mount the switches for the trunk, and then you also will have a light plug that can be removed. Here we have our door panel assembly, and if you take a look around the outer edge of this, there are 10mm screws that all have to be removed to take this whole plate assembly out. Now here at the back side of this door, there is a plastic assembly piece that's in here. You will have to push that through to get the panel off, but first we're going to start by getting the window hooked up and removing the window from the regulator track itself. The reason why you want to do this is so that you don't break the window while you're trying to work with this, because again, the whole assembly needs to come out, so the window must be taken up. They use a T27 here. If you see, you have to roll up the window to a specific place so you can access the clips that hold the window regulator assembly on. They're just like a clamshell style. They squeeze the window and hold it in place. So once you do is loosen them up, and then you can pull the window up. You are going to want to have some tape handy. This is to hold the window up. You don't want to use duct tape. Preferably you're going to want to use masking tape. That way it's strong enough to hold it up, but not so strong that it's going to leave sticky residue on top of the window. So all you do is pull the window up, and then you can put a small piece of tape over the top. Electrical tape or scotch tape or anything like that probably won't hold the window in place. So make sure you have it secured, because if this window falls, it might shatter inside the door if you don't have it securely placed up there. So now we're ready to push this through. There are 2 little pins here that all you do is pop them in and pop the other one in, and then you're going to push the whole plastic piece in, because this part is attached to the window regulator assembly, and there it is. It's now in the door and out of the way. We can start by pushing in all these grommets for all the cables that come through here. The door lock actuator has a grommet as well, and here's a grommet for the main cable on the vehicle. These are all clipped in, all the wires, so you will want to unclip them from the door itself and unplug the speaker. Now these clips all mount this cable to the door. So what you want to do is get either a screwdriver or some sort of tool to help you pop them out. We can start by removing the 10mm that hold the panel assembly on. So they are on the perimeter of this black panel. Here we have our panel removal tool. This will help us pop these clips out, and we're just going to work them out slowly to try to keep them from breaking. All they are is some prongs that hold them in place, and we want to try to retain them as much as you possibly can so that you can push them back in place when you're done reinstalling this. So here we have our complete, everything is loose and out of the way. The grommets are all out and the panel is ready to come out. You may want to have a small screwdriver. We're using a panel removal tool and to break the seal. The panel has an adhesive kind of that has it sealed against the door, so you are going to want to pop that loose to break the seal, and as you can see, the door panel will drop down a little. We also have a clip here that you can't really see that actually clips the wires on the back side to the door panel window regulator assembly. So if you just push down and apply some pressure and pop each clip in, it will push through and you can get that out of the way. If you wait till you're after the door panel is coming off, then you're going to have a hard time and you'll be hung up on this clip. So the window regulator assembly comes up and out. So what you do is you can lift up from the bottom, and you're going to have to get the regulator tracks to clear the door, and you're going to be swinging the front side where the speaker is down so that you can clear the cables and the actuator latch door pin rod on the top left. And so you take that, and then we can actually go in and remove the panel itself completely, get the cables through. And remember, we still have the cable for the door latch still connected, so we have to remove that, and the clip is on the inside edge of the door, so you can either try to use your finger but you will need to remove this connector before we proceed and pull the harness through. This plastic assembly here was the one we mentioned that we pushed through earlier. This is something that we can just pull out. Again, we don't need to swap this over. It doesn't need to be put back onto the new latch. It's just garbage. Here we are at the latch assembly, and we're taking our triple square, and these bolts hold the actual door actuator to the door itself. So we're going to remove those. Now we're going to pop this cap off, and this is going to gain us access to a T20 Torx that we use to remove the outer door handle and lock cylinder. We want to make sure that we don't loosen this screw too much, because what can happen is there's a spring-loaded assembly in there that can come apart, and you will need to replace that entire assembly if you loosen it too much. So what you're going to do is loosen it and pull on the door handle while you're doing so, and what you'll see is the door lock cylinder will become loose. And now we have our lock cylinder out. So now we take a look here. On the door handle, there's a cable between the door latch and the handle, so we just pop it out and push it inside to get it so it's not hung up. Now that everything has been removed, we can take these triple squares the rest of the way out and remove the door latch assembly. Here we have our new door latch assembly, and we offer the Volkswagen and Audi version. That's what we prefer, as genuine parts are better quality. So all these parts from the original latch will need to be swapped over. So here we are with our Volkswagen latch. And keep in mind, this is the driver's side of the vehicle. The passenger side would be a very similar process. So there's 3 major components we're going to be swapping over. They are going to be the cable for the inner door, the actuator assembly right here, and the inner door handle. All you're going to do is, for the actuator, is swing that rod in and then pop it out. And then there's a clip here that holds this in place. And all you're going to do is you can kind of get a screwdriver in there to pop it out. It is pretty tight. Here we have the assembly where it mounts to the latch. You have to twist it and then pull it out. So all we do is slide it in place and then turn it, and then we can snap the cable back in place. Here we have, this is the cable that attaches to the outer door handle, and all it does is has a specific orientation to which allows you to slide it out. So you can pull back the actuator and pull it off. It just slides in and then turns in place. So here we can reinstall it on the new latch. Here is the actuator rod, and you're gonna have to kind of swivel that in place. First you hook it in to get it underneath, and then you'll turn it in place. Make sure when you're installing the door latch that you have this cable set up so that it will be fed through the hole in the door for the handle. Here we have our door latch assembly ready for installation. Make sure your orientation is correct, and when we slide it through, make sure the cable for the outer door handle is fed through and in a place where you can get in there. Then it's nice to have a bolt handy so that you can thread everything in place once you do that. When you're reinstalling the cable for the door latch, you will want to make sure that you have the correct amount of tension on it. So just make sure it's taut but not crazy tight, and then you can snap it in place. Keep in mind, once you have all that tight, you can then reinstall your lock cylinder and you can tighten this in place. Okay, now once our door latch is installed, we are ready to reinstall our window regulator assembly. We can do so again the same as removal. We are going to want to swing the back side upwards, but first you're going to want to run this cable harness through and plug it into the door latch assembly. Now when installing this, you can get it through the hole here and then feed it up over the door actuator rod that runs in there. You have to get it up and over, then slide it down. Got to be careful you don't break anything along the way. And we can pull the inner door handle cable through, and then if you see this top corner, we can slide it in and then up. Make sure you keep the cables out of the way as you're doing this. And when you do that, eventually you will see everything seat. So now you can attach all the parts of the harness. This clip on the inside here may be easier to do now or have before you even install the panel. Now we can pull our grommets through. You want to make sure that these are all seated in place properly, as this will prevent any moisture from coming inside the vehicle itself. Now we want to make sure we get all this seated in place. Once you do get it seated in place, you should be able to see every one of your bolt holes all around the edges. So we can take a look at that. they're all in place, and we can start putting those in. Now that we have the whole panel installed, we can get all of our rest of our grommets in and plug in the window motor and get the harness clipped into each of its associated holes. Keep in mind, if any of your clips broke along the way, it isn't that big of a deal, but if you do want to make sure that the wires don't move around in there, you can tape them in place. Now we can plug in these connectors up top and slide them into their associated clips that hold them in place as well. Now we can take the tape off the door and slide the window back in place and tighten the window regulator clips. Keep in mind, just push down on it pretty good and make sure all the window regulator is seated. The window is seated into the clips really good before you do that, and tighten it in place just to make sure that it doesn't come out of those clips. Otherwise, you'll have to repeat this process if it does come loose. So we can take our T27 and tighten the clips on the window regulator. Now everything's done, and we are ready to install our door panel. We can cover these holes back up, and something you may want to do before you proceed here is plug in the window regulator assembly to the window switches and run it up and down and see if it works properly. Now here we have our inner door handle harness. All it has is a hook that hooks onto the handle itself, and then a clip that slides into a specific channel and locks into the door panel. Here are our clips, and a lot of times you will lose them as you remove the panel, so you can just slide them back in place. As we reinstall the panel, it's easiest to start by clipping on the connectors for the lower switches first, and then the door light, and then we move up from the bottom of the door up to the top. This will allow you to work everything in and make sure you don't forget anything. One note to keep in mind, you may want to try testing the door switches for the trunk and the fuel door, because they can be reversed, and if you hit the fuel door button it might open your trunk and vice versa. So something to keep in mind. We can then reinstall the cable for the door, and you want to hook that in place. Usually it's easiest to pull the handle out a little and then hook it in place and slide the clip in. Then you want to clear over the pin and rod, and then you want to get over the lip on the door to lock the panel in place, but not so high that the door pin comes out. So just something to be careful of. It does take a little finesse. Now once we've gotten to that point, you are ready to reinstall the panel, but before we do so, we want to make sure we feed the cable for the window switches up so that it's in place. Otherwise you'll be taking the door panel back off after you pop it in place. So as you can see, it's swinging free. and we have tested our trunk to make sure that when you hit the trunk button it does work. And all you do is push the door in place. We will have to give it a little slap, and then we can reinstall our Phillips screws. There are 3 of them here. Now to install the switches, you plug them in, and then we can just hit down and the clips that hold that in place will pop in. And then we can reinstall the clip on the inner part of the door handle, and that just snaps in place. And now we're ready to reinstall the 3 T20 Torx in the lower part of the door panel and the Phillips at the door hinge itself.